Good morning. This is Connor from 0DTE Traders here to present the week ahead for August 25th, 2025. Let's dive in. Fed Chair Powell surprised markets in his Jackson Hole speech last week by hinting at a possible September rate cut. He described tariff driven inflation as temporary and downgraded the labor market outlook, both positives for consumers and businesses. According to the CME FedWatch tool, markets are pricing an 87% probability of a September rate cut. That is up from 75% prior to Powell's speech. For the week, the S&P rose 0.3%, Dow gained 1.6%, Russell 3.4%, while the Nasdaq slipped 0.9%. As we anticipated, sector rotation was the dominant theme and could persist this week. This week, participants will be closely watching NVIDIA earnings as the semiconductor giant prepares to release its latest quarterly earnings on Wednesday. The company's earnings have frequently moved markets, and investors have grown accustomed to standout quarterly performances. With the AI sector gaining renewed attention, analysts will be particularly focused on NVIDIA's commentary regarding its AI chip business and exposure to China. On the economic front, Thursday will bring the first estimate of the second quarter GDP growth, followed on Friday by the July reading for the PCE, so the Core Personal Consumer Expenditure Price Index, which is the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. To start the week, the Gamma Index, which tracks dealer Gamma exposure, is positive at 820 million notional. Trading above the transition of 64.45, that is our volatility flip. As you can see, all strikes above positive, that is supportive for the market price. Most strikes below negative, that is destabilizing for the market price. As of right now, there is a supportive backdrop for equities. However, we are nearing peak gamma and our upper bound, which sits at 6,500 for the SPX. And this is referred to as the call wall, simply defined by the strike with the highest notional positive gamma. Once again, that's 6,500 for the SPX, 650 for the SPY, which is equivalent to 6513 SPX. In order to see material upside at this juncture beyond this zone, we need to see calls being added further out in time and price, which will shift higher that call wall, giving us an indication there's more upside. Now, a high probability 0DTE trade is to sell short calls at or above the call wall. Keep in mind there needs to be adequate premium to justify the trade, so our general guideline is a minimum of $80 on a 5-wide spread. In the month of August thus far, this setup has materialized 8 times with a 100% win rate. Now, statistically, this trade is very high probability. You can see our trade statistics here regarding this metric. And we should continue to trade it if the minimum conditions are met. However, if that shifts higher, we want to be a little bit more cautious selling that strike. If you watched our video from a couple weeks ago, same sort of dynamics with that 6,400 handle. We kept selling calls. Once that shifted higher, we moved up, 80 points. And then we went to essentially selling puts on that strike. But call wall here looks to be in play today. Other levels, well, they're really unchanged week over week. Taking a look at the SPX chart on the 1-hour time frame, we are back in the August OPEX range, where we spent about 3-4 days just chopping sideways. So same levels here, potential lower bound 64.50, 64.45 flip, potential upper bound 64.75, 64.80, 81 being the all-time high. A break would imply continuation of Friday's move with the logical target of 6,500, 6513, that is our call wall and upper bound. On the downside, if we break below that flip, we would anticipate elevated volatility with support at 6413, 6400. We got a small gap here on the downside at 6384. That would be gap entry. Fill at 6373. And then we have a concentration of support levels down here. 63.75, 63.63, and 63.50. A break of 63.50, which more or less marked the low from last week, would imply weekly continuation with major support at 63.13, 6300. This is technically deemed our put wall, so the inverse of the call wall. If you want to learn a structured framework, how to generate trade ideas, manage positions, and consistently profit week over week, join the team at 0DTEtraders.com.